Welcome into Marketology for Monday, February 19th. We have Vice President of CG Technology, Matt Holt, on with us to go over recent sports betting action in the landscape of sports betting recently and in the near future here. Matt, welcome in. How you doing today, buddy?
Hey, Drew. How's it going?
I'm doing good, man. Excited to get your opinion. We got UFC, Daytona 500. We got the NBA All-Star betting action, plus some college basketball betting action for tonight. Guys, feel free to chime in. Any questions you have? We have Wanma behind camera, the producer here. How you doing today, Wanma?
What up, boys?
Any questions for Wanma as well? But Matt, let's start off with UFC. I know you know UFC pretty much as good as anybody out there. Have actually been missing your picks, man. Have you been tweeting them out?
Yeah, I try to still. I quit doing the podcast for scheduling reasons, and I may pick up a new podcast with a new partner, but the time I was having to dedicate to go over to the Palms every week and do it just be kind of conflicted with my schedule. But yeah, I had a good week, and so did the book actually on UFC. When you look at the UFC main event this past week, Donald Cowboy Cerrone versus Yancy Medeiros, you had a fight where Cowboy Cerrone opened up around $1.50, $1.55, and the favorite in this one completely flip-flopped. The action was so one-sided on the Hawaiian underdog, Medeiros, that Medeiros ended up closing the favorite in this fight. By far our biggest liability, by far most handle on the card, and of course Cowboy Cerrone getting that first-round knockout finish. That ended up being really good for the books, and we saw not only in the main event the favorite flip-flop, but the co-main event as well, as Marcin Tybura opening around $1.40, $1.45 favorite against Derek the Black Beast Lewis. And that one flip-flopped to Lewis, a small favorite at close, and of course Lewis getting the knockout victory there. So interesting the amount of handle on what was fairly a smaller UFC card this weekend, but with no NBA, lots of action on the UFC this past weekend.
And Matt, as far as UFC betting goes, would you say it's one of, if not the fastest growing sports to bet on?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, for 3 straight years, 2013, 14, and 15, it was the fastest growing sport. 14, 15, and 16. 17 slowed down a little bit. Conor McGregor never fought once. John Jones got suspended again for steroids. Ronda Rousey quit fighting. 2017 was a tough year for the UFC, but it looks like they're starting to develop some new stars. 18 looks like it could be a really positive year, and we already have a super fight booked for July with Daniel Cormier, the light heavyweight champion, going up to take on heavyweight champion of the world, Stipe Miocic.
And Matt, what kind of styles do you find yourself liking to bet? Do you like to go with like jiu-jitsu guys or more boxing background guys? Do you find yourself wanting to bet on a certain type of fighter?
Well, nowadays, what you tend to see in mixed martial arts is that most of the really good mixed martial artists are just that, true mixed martial artists who are able to kind of diversify amongst a large group of skill sets. But at the end of the day, I have a hard time. If I'm going to pick a guy who's one-dimensional, I'd still rather have a striker than a grappler because they start standing. You see quicker stand-up by refs now. You're on the ground. The grappler has the striker in a dominant position, but he's not really doing anything. The refs tend to stand him up because that's what the fans want to see. So, if I had to choose just one style, I'd probably lean towards strikers, especially if they have good defensive wrestling.
Okay, good stuff, man. And yeah, we got college basketball betting action coming up in just a minute. What about Daytona 500? Did you guys get a big handle on that?
It's interesting. Everyone calls this a dead weekend, but we have Daytona 500. We had a great golf tournament, UFC, boxing. We actually did get a little bit of handle, and of course, Austin Dillon winning it ended up being really good for the books. We always take tons of Bush brothers action here, Kurt and Kyle Busch. Mostly due to the local connections they have. So we always take a ton. In fact, we took more bets on the Bush brothers combined than all the other drivers in the race. And when a 40 or 50 to 1 wins a race like that, it's oftentimes really good for the book, especially a name that most NASCAR aficionados don't necessarily know. So that ended up being a really positive result for us.
What did he go off at? He was a big plus price?
I think we opened 50, closed at 40.
Okay, and is that the biggest bet race of the year, Daytona 500, or would there be another? Would the Vegas race be bigger?
Yeah, here the Vegas races, and we have two now. We actually have two Vegas races, and the Vegas races certainly do more handle. NASCAR as a whole doesn't do much wagering handle anymore. In fact, the Daytona 500 and the Indy 500 combined won't do as much handle as when we actually have the races here in town.
And can you bet it like driver versus driver, kind of like you can in golf sometimes, or is it only like I guess you could say like the futures, the big plus prices on the drivers?
No, we have driver versus driver. It's similar to golf, except in golf, with 140 field, you can make a lot more matchups that you can in NASCAR. And in NASCAR, so many of the prices on those are track and car sensitive. Certain kind of cars do well on certain kind of tracks. So we tend to only do like 6 to 10 matchups on NASCAR, is where on golf you probably get 25 to 30.
Okay. All right. Good stuff, Matt. And what about the NBA All-Star game? I mean, it was kind of ridiculous, that total in that game. But was there, any defense? But I guess it landed way under, huh? Did you guys do well?
We did okay on the game, but actually we lost a little bit of money on the total. There was a big sharp move on that total, and I think the total ended up dropping like 10 points or something. I mean, just a crazy sharp move on the total in that game. And the game stayed way under. It wasn't even close to ever going over. But we actually took a lot of money, both money line and spread, on Steph Curry's team, plus 2.5, and money line in the game. They lost by 3. So LeBron's team actually getting the 3-point win and the cover ended up being pretty good for us. I think we ended up winning like 35K, which isn't great, but we'll take it on an exhibition game.
Okay. We got Andrew in the chat box asking about Oklahoma, Kansas. We got that right now. We got what the Sooners getting 8.5 right now, 8.5 or 9. Not sure what you guys have it at, Matt. It looks like about 165-ish is the total. Oklahoma lost 5 straight, 7 straight ATS. Is anybody betting the Sooners tonight?
Yeah, not really. I just looked at the game as you said that, and look, it's actually kind of turned into a pros versus Joes game for us. About 3 times more dollars wagered on Oklahoma over the counter, but the sharp money on account, 98% of the dollars wagered on account right now on the Kansas Jayhawks. And a little bit of an interesting side note on this game is there was a big controversy in the Kansas-West Virginia game on Saturday, and I've seen several articles written now about Kansas and how they get all these home calls. And in the game Saturday against West Virginia, Kansas shot 35 free throws to just 2 for West Virginia. 35 to 2, the free throw differential in that game Saturday. And there's been a big stink about it, and I've seen several people, including on Yahoo Sports, Seth Davis, several other people writing articles about how much more advantage the Kansas Jayhawks get at home from the referee. So it's going to be interesting to see, with all this attention on all the love that the Jayhawks get at home by the refs, are the refs going to be a little more hesitant to blow the whistle tonight, especially in a game now where that point spread's up to 9.
Yeah, that ratio was ridiculous of free throws, man. I didn't see the game, but when I read it, you don't see that very often. We got Alvarez in the chat box asking about Notre Dame, Miami. Notre Dame minus 4.5. Have you guys taken any lopsided action on this game, Matt?
Let me see where we're at in that one right now. Fairly even over the counter, a little bit more money on Miami over the counter, not surprisingly, a little bit more money on Notre Dame on account. The Sharps tend to favor the home team here by a slight margin. And we did take a couple of sharp bets on the under here, under 140, under 139.5. We just took another one for 1,700. So, yeah, we're actually seeing a little bit of sharp money on the under here tonight. It's interesting. Miami struggled since Bruce Brown went out. This is a team that was far exceeding expectations throughout the season. Bruce Brown goes out, and all of a sudden the Hurricanes are kind of in a funk. And on the other side of the ball, Notre Dame had all those injuries the beginning of the year. They've got a couple players back. Bonzie Colston still out for the rest of the season, but they did get a couple of guys back. They're playing better basketball of late. These are two teams that might be trending in opposite directions.
Catholics, convicts, basketball style. That should be a good one. And Andrew's doing having a follow-up question. Appreciate the questions, Andrew. How Oklahoma laying -2 last game at home, and now they're plus 8.5. That's a big swing. I mean, what are the type of things that make the point spread go that much different, Matt? Like, just technically for this game, or I guess overall in college basketball? What are usually the things that make that happen?
A lot of it's momentum. People like to bet what they saw last, really, regardless. How does this team look? Last game momentum is so critical in sports, not just basketball, but we really have two teams here on opposite directions. I mean, Kansas in the latest bracketology is up to a number 1 seed. And on the other side of it, we have an Oklahoma team that's lost 5 straight, 6 of their last 7. And these aren't necessarily close losses. Lost by 11 at home to Texas, lost by 10 to Texas Tech, lost by 8 to Iowa State last place. I mean, this is a team that's just not getting it done in any way, shape, or form. Their only win in their last 7 games is a 2-point victory at home versus Baylor. Look, maybe Trae Young's tired. They say sometimes these freshmen that carry big loads like this hit a wall. Maybe that's the case for Trae Young right now, who's just carrying too much of a load as a true freshman. But this Oklahoma team is really struggling right now. And on the other side, Kansas has turned themselves into a number 1 seed again all of a sudden.
Yeah, good question there, Andrew. And Matt, what about in the Big Ten, Minnesota, Wisconsin? Looks like 138 to total. Wisconsin -7. Is that what you guys have it at? And are you taking any lopsided action in that one?
We're actually 7.5 on that game right now, and they've been betting the home team there, and I don't know if it's just us or if it's the market as a whole. I think some of it is the market as a whole, but we've seen sharp money on Wisconsin all year, and I call it Cleveland Brown-esque because Wisconsin has been such an epic disaster for bettors this year. They've played so poorly. They're going to miss the tournament for the first time in 30 years, but sharp players continue to back the Badgers game in and game out, even as a favorite. Here again, we're seeing a team that has trouble scoring tremendously, laying 7.5 here at home to Minnesota. The only problem here for Pitino Jr.'s team is Amir Coffey out, Eric Curry out, Reggie Lynch out, Dupree McBrayer may not even play tonight as well. I mean, this Minnesota team has been ravaged by injuries and infighting in the locker room all year. Normally, I would look to basically take anybody in the Big Ten catching this many points against this Wisconsin team. But the way that this Minnesota team's going right now, I don't know what to make of this game.
Okay. And Matt, what do you guys got going on for conference tourney odds? You're going to be out with that in just a couple days?
Yeah, you know what? I started working on them all weekend, got most of them done. We should have them all out for betting by Wednesday, and those are actually really popular. And one of the reason is in those type of future markets, you're basically getting those future prices, 20, 30, 40 to 1, but you're only open for a couple of weeks. I mean, the first conference tournaments will start a week from today, and then the next week, the really big ones will get going. So basically, you're not tying your money up for months and months. You're just tying it up for a couple of weeks. And there's a lot more upsets in these conference tournaments than there are in the big dance. There's some coaches in the NCAA that don't believe that winning their conference tournament is that critical. In fact, one of the hardest ones I had to do was trying to figure out the Big East. We were working on it this morning. Villanova is almost assured of a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament at this time. How much stock are they going to put into trying to win their conference tournament? And then you have teams like St. John's, who is terrible all season long, suddenly on a 4-game win streak that includes wins over top 5 teams in Duke and Villanova, and the tournaments played in Madison Square Garden, their home court. So Big East, one of the ones that gave us trouble, but NCAA basketball conference tournament betting, a really fun opportunity, and you tend to get some longer shots sometimes than you actually do in the big dance.
Yeah, Matt. And what about like this time of year? This is one of my favorites, conference tournament time. How is it working on the other side of the counter? Do you enjoy this time of year? I guess the conference tournament betting?
Oh, I absolutely love it. And look, this time of year, I always tell people to keep motivation in mind. Motivation really is irrelevant all year in college basketball. Everybody wants to win, but this time of year, you have some of these teams that have dominated their mid-major conferences all year that know they have to win their conference tournament to get into the NCAA tournament. Sometimes they overlook teams at this time of year. They're looking ahead to that conference tournament that means everything. You see a lot of teams that are 12-1, 13-1, 12-2 in their mid-major conference get upset outright this time of year, looking ahead to that conference tournament. And now with the NIT, the CBI, the CIT, there's so many more conferences to play for. Some of these mid-majors that are 16 and 11, 17 and 10, they start playing, they start hustling it up this time of year, really playing their best basketball and going all out, because getting an extra game or two in the CBI, CIT, that might not mean anything to a Power 5 conference team, but to some of these mid-majors, it's a big recruiting tool. So motivation, a lot more important than some people might realize these last couple weeks.
Yeah, I love betting those small tourneys too, man. That's fun stuff. Hey, we have John Gambler in here, and guys, we're going to be hitting on the NHL, the Vegas team. John Gambler asking, what sports do you bet on? UFC and NCAA basketball? Do you bet on any more? You personally, Matt?
Yeah, my main focus for wagering personally is on college basketball, college football, MMA. But I'll bet anything if we find opportunities. I actually made an in-play wager today on the early hockey game when the Islanders were up 2-1. I took Minnesota early. So I'll bet all things. I certainly don't bet as much NHL or NBA as a lot of people, but because we make odds every day, sometimes you just see opportunities that you think have value, win or lose, and I'm happy to make a play if I see value anywhere.
Okay. And guys, yeah, thanks for tuning in. The watchers, it's growing. We appreciate it. If you're liking the content, please give us a thumbs up. And we'd also love it if you could retweet on Twitter or Facebook, anything like that. That would help us out as well. Matt, on to hockey here. We got Anaheim, plus 140-ish right now at Vegas, and it's money on the dog in this match. You don't see that much with Vegas playing, huh?
No, and I'll say this, the one thing that has been for sure a lock every single week and every single day this year is that when the Vegas Golden Knights play, they're our biggest liability on the NHL board that night. Las Vegas has fallen in love with the Golden Knights, and for good reason, right? They're in first place as an expansion team, but this team has taken this city by storm. The fact that the season started right after that massacre, too, that we had out here at that country music concert where the season started with Vegas strong, Golden Knights. It really brought this community together, and this community is really behind Vegas. And what we see is we tend to get 4 or 5 times more action on the Vegas Golden Knights game than the next bet hockey game every time, and most of that action's on the Golden Knights. But this is one of those rare spots tonight where we're actually getting some pretty good two-way action. This line opened, let me see what we opened at. We opened at minus 175. We're down to 160 right now. And we've taken some sharp action on the Ducks tonight. Now, look, it's still early. The game doesn't start till 7 o'clock. My guess is that by the time they drop the puck, we'll probably need the Anaheim Ducks. But as of right now, we actually need Vegas, and that has been a rarity this NHL season.
Yeah, and Matt, I haven't been following them too closely of recent, but I know they started off with a huge, I guess, home ice advantage. Why do you think that is? Are the opposing teams really going out and partying and then playing hungover, or what do you think's behind that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So that was kind of the theory at the beginning of the year. The teams were coming in, taking Vegas lightly, going out, getting here the night before, and maybe Vegas got the best of them in some cases and not coming out and playing their best the next night. But at this point, nobody could be taking Vegas lightly. They've been in first place basically all season long. So it's hard for me to imagine anyone taking them lightly. I'll tell you this. If you ever get a chance when you're out here to go to a Golden Knights game at T-Mobile, I haven't been to a ton of hockey games outside of Boston Bruins games when I lived there, and now some Vegas Golden Knights games at T-Mobile, but I've been to a lot of events at T-Mobile Arena. I've never heard it that loud for anything. The atmosphere is unbelievable in T-Mobile Arena right now. I think they at least have a top 5 advantage in home ice advantage in the NHL. And people were talking about, would they even have a home ice advantage? Because people thought so many of the visitors would come to Vegas for these games all the time. And we do see a lot of visitors' jerseys, but I'll tell you, that place is absolutely electric for Vegas Golden Knights games.
Yeah, and what about the place for UFC fights? Do you notice it's a better atmosphere there than at other locations in Vegas?
So, I mean, that's where they have the biggest pay-per-view fights too, is at the T-Mobile Arena. It's the same thing. But I mean, UFC fights there are great. I've watched a bunch of fights there. But you can't beat Golden Knights right now. I mean, people are just so into the Vegas Golden Knights and the fact that they're an expansion team that's in first place. And not only are they an expansion team that's in first place, but they have a super fan-friendly style. They're fast. They score a ton of goals. You know, there's a lot of I've never seen anything like it, really.
Yeah, no, it looks good on TV too. You can tell the atmosphere is really electric there. Matt, yeah, the vice president there at CG Technology. How many properties do you guys have there in Vegas, where your sportsbook is at?
Yeah, so we have 8. We have the Venetian, the Palazzo, the Cosmopolitan, the Palms, the Hard Rock, the Tropicana, the M, and the Silverton.
Okay, well, make sure to check that out, guys. And Matt, anything else you want to throw out there before we shut this down?
You know, no, that's it. This is going to be a really fun week. You know, again, it's the week before conference tournament starts. So if you're looking for conference tournaments odds or anything this week, hit me up on Twitter, probably Wednesday. We should have them all out by Wednesday. I'm happy to shoot anybody any odds. And, you know, if they're not in Vegas, they want to know what we have up. I'm happy to shoot those out for people. And best of luck with the conference tournaments.
Hey, well, for Matt Holt, I'm Drew Martin. We'll see you next week, guys. Thanks for tuning in.